Okay, I'm going to read the second half of a short story called The Porn Critic. And it's set in New York, but it's in my mind it's kind of a San Francisco story because the person I knew who was a porn critic and had stacks of VHS tapes in their house was actually here in San Francisco. It's going to be confusing, but Cromer is the porn critic and Renee is the woman he's hoping to impress and sleep with this night, and there are other people in the room. And they've just gone to his house. So I'm starting in the middle, you're going to be confused, but at least you'll know there's an ending, right? I'll get to the ending. Here's what the ending is going to sound like when I get there. This is the last part of the story, last lines. Cromer knew better than ever his wearisome, sacred truth, which no one, perhaps not even Greta, could see. He was innocent. Okay, that's the ending. When you hear that, that's the ending, okay? Did Renee glance at the tapes on the bracket shelves and the tapes stacked in uneven piles on the floorboards beneath the shelves and the tapes on the shelf above the closet's hangers where Cromer put all their coats? Possibly. Cromer caught invisible Luna glancing at them. Yet it was Renee's containment that Cromer should have taken as a sign. She fell silent, her limbs surrendering their animation. If only the blocks of Ludlow had each been a mile long. Greta sat cross-legged on Cromer's couch and rolled joints with the crafty intensity and patter of a stage magician, so practiced she could look away from the trick to meet her audience's eyes. "Is this all yours?" Luna said. "I've never seen anything like it." Cromer seized the opportunity with relief. The tapes had first to be mentioned so they could be dismissed. "I find it pretty incredible myself," he said. "My mansion of smut has many doors." "What's that supposed to mean?" said Luna. Cromer cut the jokes, opting for efficiency. He described the formulaic nature of the reviews he wrote, how he'd become adept enough to write one after slogging 15 or 20 minutes into a given feature, and the logistical annoyance of the VHS cartons stacking up. "You'd never think," he said, "that they could need so much of it until you'd watch them in the shop, ravenous for new releases, as if watching the same one twice would be a shameful act." The pronoun "they" was meant to put across the pronoun "they" was what he meant to put across, a verbal quarantine on the unseen behaviors dividing customer from clerk. For a few minutes the subject went underground. The joint circled the room. Cromer was content to see that as it visited under Renee's elegant nose, she sipped deeply, eyes closed. He couldn't have predicted that it would be a fuse on a stick of dynamite, a spark sizzling its way to Renee's lips, or that she'd go off like Yosemite Sam. Cromer was just dropping the needle onto a Cowboy Junkies LP when Renee screeched, "I feel like I'm sitting inside a copy of Guernica." "Sorry?" Cromer said. "I can't let my eyes rest anywhere," Renee said. "It's like a meat shop. Carnage everywhere." Greta's eyes widened. She put them at half-mast. "More like Francis Bacon," she murmured. Greta had been an art history major at college. "Really, if you squint, it's like we're in a Bosch painting." "The Garden of Earthly Delights," Cromer said. It seemed a calming phrase to utter, the Garden of Earthly Delights. Akin to saying the words, "the peaceable kingdom," or "everything that rises must converge." Or like the narcotic tone of the LP, which presently purred, "Heavenly wine and roses seem to whisper to me when you smile." "My gender studies professor did a book of life histories of sex workers," Renee said. "But it would take 1,000 years to debrief this Aladdin's cave of contorted bodies." Renee's expression was mangled like her words. "If these walls could talk, they'd moan," Greta said. "I think they might be screaming at me," Renee said. "Not everything is the same as everything else." Cromer recognized that his tone of generalized protest against equivalences wasn't going to cut much ice here. As it happened, a bookshelf at his, this is where he works, it's called Sex Machines. A bookshelf at Sex Machines featured Renee's professor's book, a fact Cromer didn't feel obliged to mention. Renee bolted upright, putting Cromer on alert for a police raid or a blouse aflame from a loose ember. Instead, she darted at the edifice of porn, coming away with 3 tapes. These 3 she tossed into Cromer's lap, poisoned potatoes. "Tell us what's so different," she said. Where could he possibly begin? Cromer flashed on the tape's contents, helplessly. Actually, Renee had done well for a random stab at his collection. 2 of these 3 had some redeeming imaginative elements. He lifted the topmost, Bare Misapprehension. Bare Misadventure and all the sequels, they're really just star vehicles for Jocelyn Geethers. It has a picaresque structure, but charming. People like them, I mean. There's a good focus on female autonomy. Cromer stumbled on the proximity of this word to anatomy. Autonomy of what? Said Renee. Autonomy of pleasure, I guess? He felt himself whirling down his own motor-mouthed drain. Whereas this, having shunted the first tape aside, he held the next, Anal Requiem 4. The Assmaid's Tale. Exposed in his lap. He hesitated over the term low end and bottom drawer before settling on junk. "That's your whole review, oh mighty critic? Junk?" said Invisible Luna. No one threw him a lifeline here. "Oh," he said, I tallied up the number of certain acts, which is all you're really dealing with in this case." He flipped it away. "This one," he said, on the other hand, "is actually pretty interesting." The film, called Social Hormones, Cromer had stayed with to the end. The Sword brothers are renowned for their commitment to establishing character arcs and narrative causality, and production values generally. You can actually watch their stuff more or less like a movie, if not a great one. He heard quotes from his own newsletter entry here. Of course, he said, there's a certain ceiling on the quality of the acting. It struck him, too late, that he was attempting to demonstrate that he wasn't a man from the moon by detailing the moon's topology. "Let's watch it," Greta said. "Or not," Renee said. She looked ill. All glanced involuntarily at Cromer's large black television, stacked with a VCR on its rolling cart. "Is it just me?" Renee continued, "or are the walls getting closer?" The suggestion's power was tremendous. Cromer, though eager for a subject on which to agree with Renee, thought better of saying he'd noticed it too. "I really should clear some of this stuff out," he began. "Or you could just brick up the windows," Luna mused. "It's like a gothic nightmare. What's it called? The Prisoner of the Rue Morgue?" "By Edgar Allan Poe!" Greta shrieked. Renee jolted from her chair a second time, now veering to the room's shrinking center. Avoiding the looming shelves, she pitched, bent double, attempting a vomity dash for Cromer's bathroom. She nearly made it. The vision she'd offered earlier, she'd called herself a pig earlier, now came fully into view, though Cromer felt anything but unsympathetic. She brushed him off after he'd gained a brief, delicious sensation of her long, knobbed spine beneath his fingers, and staggered to the toilet to finish her heaves. Cromer's special literacy was, it now seemed, something worse than a complete dead loss on the human scoreboard. It was positively toxic, able to compel vomit from gorgeous women. He thought with relief how, on her knees at least, Renee would be spared any view of the VHS tapes stacked on the porcelain tank of the toilet. Cromer labored at the floorboard with wadded paper towel and citrus solvent, wishing to spare her, too, the shame of her stinky action painting. He glanced over to see Luna and Greta side by side on the couch, charting his efforts with amusement. Greta's short fingers meandering on Luna's archer's bow thigh. Behind him, the apartment door slammed. The permanent mystery was how much you seemed to know before you knew anything at all. Or maybe the permanent mystery was how stupid you could be, and yet how you clung to evidence that your stupidity knew things you didn't. Cromer, just for instance, had named her Invisible Luna without grasping that it was he, Cromer, who was invisible to Luna. She was, he saw now, a pining, tentative lesbian in love with her best friend. He'd kept Luna blurred in his periphery, not only as a defense against how little he signified, but also for fear of understanding his small role, arousing but creepy, Cromer could keep Renee in a state of prurient susceptibility, yet repulsed by the male prospect. For Cromer and Luna had shared the same quarry, she who'd puked and vamoosed. Cromer's pointless reputation had once again run his tender hopes into the dust. As for Luna's hopes, who knew? Cromer had overplayed his role, or his apartment had. Likely neither of them had stood a chance with Renee. Of such stuff, booby prizes are made. Invisible Luna's breasts, fully visible now in the streetlight glow leaking in through Cromer's bedroom windows, were lovely to touch. Cromer was left alone with them while Luna submitted herself to Greta's actions lower down. The air was mingled sweat and smoke and vomit, the hour unknown. Needle bumping to the label, at groove's end again. It was all good, it was fine, it was wonderful, though Cromer had missed dinner and he felt hungry. For hours he'd been rising from the futon to change the record, knowing he was the inessential factor here, never certain he'd be welcomed back on when he returned. But the prospect of the exotic thing you'd recall forever, the alluring taint of a sophistication you'd never quite scrub off, kept Cromer's small place open for him, so long as he knew better than to remove his pants. Now he felt too lazy to change the record. Cromer was once again a conduit, a proprietor. He might as well have been at the counter of sex machines, his life a site where others came to test their readiness for what they feared were their disallowed yearnings. Whether that left room enough for Cromer's own yearnings remained unclear. In the meantime, Cromer was the kind of good egg who'd do his best to make certain Luna never knew what kind of threesome Greta truly wished she could submit to. No one would ever understand the little sensitivities that went into making Cromer's sort of sleazeball. When Luna was gratified, exhausting herself on the horizon of her own possibilities, she gathered up her underwear and reassembled herself with a certain horror in her eyes, then followed Renee's path and fled the apartment, leaving Cromer and Greta together alone on the futon. It was the sort of foggy finish they'd given to plenty of evenings before, though never before minus Greta's outfit and parts of Cromer's. Greta, enemy of sleep, rolled another joint. Cromer put on another record and got back into bed. Greta unbuttoned his jeans. "It's okay," Cromer said. Maybe this was what he and Greta had in common. As opposed to oblivious, solid citizens like Luna, Greta was another good egg sleazeball who'd worry that Cromer hadn't gotten a release of his own. "No," Greta said, trashing his theory. "I want a dick in me now." Not Cromer's in particular. This was just Greta's characteristic honesty. Cromer felt he had a bargaining position for once. "I demand Barney Greengrass," he said. "A whole smoked fish plate with plenty of bagels. Sable and sturgeon and chopped liver. Call your dad's guy." "They're not open," said Greta. "It's the middle of the night." "They'll be open in an hour or two," he said. He stilled her hand with his own. "Call the guy first. Set it up. Coffee and orange juice, the whole thing." Greta sighed, then picked up Cromer's phone and did as he asked. Then she took off his pants. Cromer thought, now I've added prostitution to my roll call of glamorous crimes. I fucked for sturgeon. But no, that would be playing the game by their rules. Cromer knew better than ever his wearisome sacred truth, which no one, perhaps not even Greta, could see. He was innocent. Thank you.